Hi, this is Paul Olden, the public address announcer for the New York Yankees, and you're watching and listening to PAA Game Day.
Please welcome the host of PAA Game Day and a public address announcer for Syracuse University and Colgate University, as well as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association for numerous championships, Tom Winiecki.
So welcome back to PAA Game Day, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the voices behind the roar of the crowd. I'm your host, Tom Winiecki, and today we're headed to New York City, and more specifically, to the Bronx. You've heard this man's voice echo across Yankee Stadium, calling off legends and unforgettable moments. But what you haven't heard is the story behind the mic. He's worked Super Bowls. He's announced in Los Angeles and in New York City, and he's part of one of the most exclusive clubs in all of sports. Today, we sit down with the man behind the voice, Paul Olden. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Tom. Happy to be with you.
Well, good. Paul, let's start with this. I heard you started in this profession at about 15 years of age. Now, Paul, most kids that age, they're trying to sneak into a ball game, and you're already breaking into broadcasting. So how does a young kid from Los Angeles go from the newsroom to eventually announcing Super Bowls and Yankees games?
Well, I wasn't paid when I was 15. So I started practicing when I was 15, as per a letter I had received from Dick Enberg, who was a big star in Los Angeles during my youth, along with Vin Scully and doing Dodger games and Chick Hearn doing Lakers games. Uh, so I had a great trio of announcers to steal from, borrow from, learn from, to form my own style. But Dick suggested, because I had written a number of letters, because I decided that I wasn't a very good player, so I said, well, I want to be a broadcaster then. So I wrote a bunch of letters to different sportscasters, and Dick was among those who responded and said, just go out and buy a tape recorder, which at the time was a 3-inch reel-to-reel tape recorder, literally a tape recorder, and just practice in front of the TV during games or go to Little League games. In my case, I went to University of Southern California college games to sit in the stands and practice play-by-play. So that's where I started. I obviously was still in high school at that point, but I got some PA opportunities at Dorsey High School for basketball and track and field and football. So that's where the PA part of my career started, but I had no plans on becoming a professional PA announcer. I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer.
Oh, okay. Now, earlier when we talked, you mentioned names like John Ramsey and Todd Lights and how they influenced you. Can you talk about those two gentlemen for a minute?
Well, John Ramsey was the longtime public address announcer for anything athletic in Los Angeles when I was growing up. He was the Lakers and the Kings and the Rams and the Dodgers. I'm not sure if he did hockey or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. He did everything. So you hear that voice everywhere you go if you follow sports in LA, and you can't help but be influenced by it. Todd, on the other hand, is a friend of mine, is the Dodgers PA announcer, and we worked together as a news anchor and sports anchor in Los Angeles in the early 2000s when I took a break from baseball play-by-play after Tampa Bay. He influenced me by just being one of the great voices of the game himself, in addition to being an outstanding singer. And quite often he would do national anthems. He was a big he grew up in Boston, so he did the national anthem at Fenway Park several times before he was the PA announcer. So he's a great singer, has his own band, but he's been with the Dodgers now 11 seasons. And whenever I go out there, we always visit. I go up to the PA booth and visit with him and take pictures and post pictures of the opposing coast's PA announcers who were good pals.
Oh, okay. So now, you mentioned the taking pictures, and I want to get into your photography a little bit later. But this next thing I came across as I was preparing for this, and this is impressive. The Yankees, to my count, in their 120 plus years of history, I've only found 6 full-time public address announcers. 6. Jack Lentz, George Levy, Red Patterson, Bob Shepard, Jim Hall, and you. Now, maybe our listeners or viewers, or maybe you, Paul, you could correct me. And if I miss somebody, please let me know. But still, that's fewer than U.S. presidents over that period of time. What does that mean to you?
Well, longevity for one. I mean, for Bob Shepard, he was in the job for 57 years. And Jim Hall was his number one backup for almost all of those years. Bob was a speech teacher at St. John's University, and Jim was one of his students. So he eventually took over as Bob's number one replacement, most notably because he sounded identical to him, although Jim always said, I never tried to sound similar to Bob Shepard, but that's just the way it came out. You couldn't tell if Bob wasn't there that day when Jim was at the mic because it sounded exactly the same. So I just completed my 17th season. Unfortunately, the Yankees were eliminated from playoff contention last night or on Wednesday night at the Yankee Stadium. So
that was a tough one with the Blue Jays, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was sooner or later it's all going to come to an end, whether it was with the World Series championship or being eliminated. And it's always sudden. You know, we've been preparing to do games ever since mid-February of this year when pitchers and catchers reported, and then the game started a few days later. And I do the PA for the Yankees in spring training as well because I live in Florida. Okay. I live in Florida in the off season.
Okay.
So it's a nice combination of being able to get my own spring training chops done and get ready for the regular season by doing the 15 or 16 spring training games in Tampa.
Now, we talked about those 6 announcers, you being at the end of that list. But let's be honest, Paul, this isn't a job that's posted on LinkedIn. How do you become the voice of the New York Yankees? Did they just call you up and say, hey, Paul, you busy on Tuesday night?
Essentially, that was it.
Really?
It wasn't something as quite that simple, but it was similar in that I got a call, or I didn't get a call. A call was made to my radio station, KNX Radio in Los Angeles, and Mike Bonner, who was in charge of the scoreboard operations at the time. So I never met Mike. And he said I was looking for Paul Olden. And so the guy who answered the phone then called me at home and said, hey, there's this guy from the Yankees named Mike Bonner. Do you know who he is? I said, no. Well, anyway, he said he wants to talk to you. And so I called him up and he told me what was going on. And the Yankees, of course, were making the transition from the old stadium to the new stadium in 2009. And so he said, we're looking for someone to follow in Bob Shepard's footsteps. Notice I didn't say replace, but follow in his footsteps. And so he said, okay, I'll send you a sample script and you rehearse it, and then we'll fly you in for an audition here at Yankee Stadium. And so I didn't hear from him for another 3 weeks. I thought maybe they changed their mind. And then I got the call, and the follow-up script was in the mail, and I read it, and they flew me out there on March 20th, 2009, to be the audition subject that particular day. They had auditioned several other people apparently, but I think, as I found out in retrospect, they really targeted me. But they had to go through the motions, I guess, of auditioning other people, so as not to cause suspicion. So I got the script, and I flew to Yankee Stadium, and it was partly snowing that day. And the funny thing about the audition was they were still constructing Yankee Stadium,
Oh,
so
really?
a lot of the workers were still in the stadium. And one part of the script said, "And ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the sky as the U.S. Army Golden Knights parachute team is going to be landing at Yankee." And you could see some of the workers stop what they were doing, and they started looking up and looking around.
Oh, see.
And the only thing they got was a face full of snow.
Well,
It was just part of
they
the script.
believed your voice. They believed your
Yeah,
voice.
yeah. So they had different Yankee personnel sitting in different parts of the ballpark listening to me.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and many of them I'd known because I've been with the Yankees in the early
Okay.
90s doing games on TV.
Okay.
So many of the people who were listening to me in 2009 already knew who I was. So it wasn't like I was a stranger coming to town. And then a few weeks later, I got a call from the Steinbrenners while I was on vacation. And they said, "Well, we'd like to welcome you to the Yankee family. We want you to be our PA announcer."
Oh,
So that was it.
what did it feel like getting that phone call?
Oh, just great. A relief, really, because I was looking to get back into baseball after taking 5 years off from doing play-by-play, and this again came out of the blue. I really wasn't paying that much attention, so I didn't realize the Yankees were building a new stadium, and it was ready to open in 2009.
Oh, wow.
Uh, Kind of
What,
divorced myself from following baseball day to day after a
okay.
while.
Yeah. What a way to get back into baseball is to be named
Yeah,
the PA announcer at Yankee Stadium. Now, our
yeah.
producer, Matthew Wallace, came across a New York Daily News article from November 27, 2009, where Bob Shepard talked about you. And he said, and I quote, "He seems to be a very quiet, dignified, and a professional fellow taking over my job after 50 or more years up here. When I hear him in the background, when I'm listening to the TV, he sounds clear. He sounds dignified. I think he sounds professional. That's what the Yankees were looking for." Close quote. Now, you're following legends. And yet, when fans hear you, they know that's Paul Olden. That's not Bob Shepard. That's not Jim Hall. That's Paul Olden. So, how do you bring your own flavor to the mic without losing the weight of Yankee tradition?
Well, it was a pretty easy transition. It helped that I had known Bob for many years,
Mhm.
so it wasn't like I was coming in and replacing or following a legend that I was in awe of. Certainly, I was in awe of what he had accomplished, but I knew him on a personal level as well, so that helped ease the transition. And I just did what they hired me to do.
Mhm.
I'm sure that many of them had heard me doing the Super Bowl public address announcer
Okay.
job and figure that I could handle a big assignment like being the Yankees PA guy.
Hmm.
So I didn't have any real issues of stepping in and just being me and being what they were looking for. As long as stayed inside what they called the Bob Shepard box
Hmm.
of style, I
Okay.
could kind of bounce around from corner to corner inside that box, but not to kind of exceed the edges. And that meant not being crazy like Carnival Barker type
Yeah.
announcer,
Yeah.
which I wasn't anyway. That wasn't my style, and I think they
Yeah.
knew that. And many of them heard me do New York Jets play by play
Hmm.
and Yankees baseball for the years I was with the team and in New York in the early 90s. So they kind of knew what kind of style of announcer I was anyway. I wasn't a
Okay.
screamer. I wasn't
Yeah.
a guy who was going to yell and go crazy behind the microphone.
Yeah. Now, there was one thing you told me that you'll root for the Yankees as long as the mic is off. So how does that sound in your game announcements?
Well, I really don't have to say much in game announcements other than to introduce a player, and that how much energy I give to the introduction depends on the state of the game at the time. So if there's a big, let's say there's a pitching change in a key moment, and the Yankees are on the verge of scoring or something like that, when the time comes to announce the batter, I'll give it a little bit more because we're trying to get the crowd pumped up as well. But I do that just by raising the timbre of my voice, not by screaming or anything like that. And that helps kind of underscore that this is an important moment. So pay attention because Aaron Judge is at the plate.
Announcing the Game is a free resource to public address announcers to take you through how to take your skills to the next level. A simple click on the sport gives you free access to a video that goes over terminology and rules specific to a lot of sports. So take a look. See if we can help you improve your skills. So we're back with our guest, Paul Olden. Now, Paul, the fans hear you in the stands. They recognize your voice. We've talked about that. That's Paul Olden. But I want to talk about an invisible relationship between a public address announcer and their audience. What's it like at Yankee Stadium with those passionate and highly knowledgeable baseball fans?
Again, as a PA announcer, I don't have to really have that much of a relationship with the crowd other than to announce clearly and concisely what's happening on the field. Excuse me. And so, I'm in a booth by myself. So I am kind of separated from everybody else, even in our master control. I'm just connected with an earpiece to my director. We work so closely together that I don't even have to get any cues for pitching changes or anything like that. I know when I see animation on the scoreboard, it's time for me to talk, and he expects me to be ready. That's the only thing. They expect me to be ready when I'm supposed to talk, even though they don't give me cues, because I know the format and how things are supposed to go. So, and I take pride in being ready and not being caught by surprise. Every once in a while, they try to slip in a pitching change at a spot where they don't normally do it, but I'm ready. Yep. A couple of times I've been caught, but other times, over 17 years, you get a bobble here, bobble there.
But it sounds like with your preparation, it's a work that nobody sees you do, but it results in a smooth production and things are done on time. Now, earlier, yes. you talked about your relationship with Bob Shepard, the voice of God, he was called. And you knew him from your television days. You talked with him all the time. And you even stayed close with his wife, Mary, after his passing. And I heard that you keep a photo of him on your desk. What do those relationships mean to you?
I like to have that connection with the people that I either worked with or had a relationship with over the years. Let me pause here and get this picture. Hold on. Be right back. Not going very far, so I just have to reach into my game bag here. So. All right, here's the picture I put on it's been on the desk for 16 years. And it's just a photo of him at work. And then there are a couple of news blurbs in here saying, tomorrow in Yankee history, September 5th, 2007, Bob Shepard works his final game as Yankees PA announcer. And then the other one is April 17th, 1951, PA announcer Bob Shepard and Mickey Mantle each make their major league debut. So obviously covers quite a bit of time. And so I like to have that on the desk as a comforting reminder of what my responsibilities
are. I would wonder who would be more honored for that date in 1951. Is it Mickey Mantle to be more impressed that he started with Bob Shepard, or Bob Shepard that he started the same time Mickey Mantle did? That'd be a terrific question.
Yeah, well, Mickey didn't last 57 years as an active duty player, so I think he would certainly give Bob his props, but I think Bob would be more impressed with Mickey Mantle, as so many thousands were.
Now, I'm sure that you've picked up a lot from all those folks that you crossed paths with over the years, from Los Angeles, the people you mentioned there, and the people that you crossed paths with in New York City to help you develop into the announcer that you are today. So, Paul, let's flip the switch a little bit. You have a chance now to give all of us public address announcers out there watching and listening some advice. If you could do that, what would you tell us?
Well, the only thing that I stress to young announcers coming up is and this kind of sounds counterproductive, but try not to sound like an announcer. I have a kind of a conversational style that I take to my announcing as well as this off microphone as well. We used to, when I was in college at the Los Angeles City College studying broadcasting back in the 70s, we had a way of describing certain announcers as the Ronnie Radios, because they kind of affected a voice and a style that wasn't really realistic, because off mic they didn't sound anything like they did on mic. Uh, and me and my buddies tried to sound on mic as much as we do the same off mic, because we think this is like Vin Scully sounded just like he did off mic as he did on mic. Um, but I have to admit that that's a rarity in the broadcasting business anyway. You kind of affect a certain voice on radio or TV that doesn't necessarily translate to talking to your family and friends off mic.
I know exactly what.
But that's my only advice. Try not to sound like an
And
announcer.
that's great advice. You're having a conversation with somebody. You just happen to be in a booth, and that person happens to be in the upper deck 330 feet away. But you're having that conversation with them during the
Yeah,
game. Now, this next
yeah.
part that I heard about is really special, Paul. And we talked again beforehand about this, that there's something you do for the last two games in a homestand of every regular season for your crew that's really special. Can you talk about that tradition that you've got?
Well, I just kind of foot the bill for the lunch for the entire crew each year, each weekend of the final regular season, because it's my way of saying, because we have so many people working, and various people work on certain days that don't work on other days. But at the end of the year, we have a fairly sizable crew, from technicians and graphics and camera people and directors and assistant directors and stats people. And it's my way of saying thanks, and congratulations on getting through another season of Yankees baseball. The ups and downs, of a regular season can be trying at times,
Yeah, yeah.
especially if things go wrong. Uh, I've had my share of goofs that I feel bad about and have trouble
Mhm.
sleeping the night of the goof. But then you come back because your crew is behind you and wants you. Everybody wants everybody else to do well, because it's tough
Yeah.
to feel bad over a mistake that sometimes people notice and other times people don't
No,
notice.
but the thing,
Quite often it's the
no,
latter. They don't notice the mistake that you think is the be
yes,
all and end all. And then you ask somebody about it and say, oh, really, that happened? Oh, I
no,
wasn't paying attention.
yeah,
Because we think everybody's hanging on about every word, and that's not
right.
usually the
But
case.
the important thing is that you knew it, or I knew that I made that mistake,
Yeah.
and that's what'll get us to fix it. But to go back to what you do for the crew, those relationships have to be so important to build over time, that those folks see that you recognize their efforts, whether they're seen or unseen, as part of, if they don't do their job right, I can't. If I don't do my job well, they can't. We're all part of a team here that has to work together.
Right.
And for you to recognize that has to be so special for them and for you as well.
Yeah, it makes me feel good, and I get a lot of thank yous and all that sort of thing. The weekend of the final regular season series against the team at Yankee Stadium, so that you like to feel good. You like to feel that people appreciate what you do for them, and I'm treated very well by the Yankees, and our crew, of course, most of the crew is in the union, and they have
Oh
their
yeah.
protections and they have their salaries, but still we have a lot of the crew that has a lot of driving to do to go because
Oh
they
yeah.
live in
Yeah.
New Jersey or way inside New York. And that's a lot of gas money, and it doesn't amount to much for a weekend of lunch for our crew, maybe $20 or something like that,
Mhm.
$10 each day. But $20 worth of gas, when you're not
That's
spending it on
true.
food at Yankee Stadium, helps that particular weekend, give you a whole week worth of travel. So it's a little thing, but I think it's a big thing in the larger
Yes,
scope of
yes, it
things.
is. And I'm sure it's well appreciated, even if you don't hear about it. I'm sure they appreciate it tremendously.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. So, folks, we're back with our guest, Paul Olden of Super Bowl and Yankee Stadium fame. All right, so let's have a little bit of fun now. We just talked about football, including those Super Bowls from 1993 to 2005, and baseball and World Series games at Yankee Stadium. Talk, if you will, a minute about the differences in announcing those two sports, how your preparation or performance is different, or maybe parts of your prep that are exactly the same.
Well, the preparation for the football games just starts the week ahead of time because you have to kind of get an idea what the offenses and the defenses look like and who's playing and who's going to be on the special teams and who's doing the kicking and holding. With baseball, with the PA, for the Yankees, I mean, I show up 2 hours ahead of the game time and have already marketing has prepared a script of the pregame activities on the field for me to narrate. So that's the extent of the preparation. I just have to make sure I have the names correctly pronounced and all that sort of thing. But football, when I do one football game a year now. That's the Pinstripe Bowl
That's right. Yeah.
at Yankee Stadium in December. And so as soon as the teams are announced, I go on YouTube, thank goodness for YouTube,
Mhm.
and start looking at the games for the particular team just to find out who the players are, how their names are
Yep.
pronounced,
Mhm.
and who I can look forward to seeing when the game comes the following week or the late December after Christmas. So that's a little bit more involved than the nightly
Yeah.
Yankee PA preparation.
Okay. Now, with the Super Bowls and World Series games, the be all and end all, the top of the mountain for those two sports. Do you do anything different in your preparation, or is it a voice inside your head that says, "All right, Paul, this is just another football game, or this is just another baseball game"?
Well, they for the World Series, for instance, we have a lot more in-game reads to do. Many of them are sponsored by Major League Baseball and required to be done. With football, with the Super Bowl, I report to the Super Bowl site 1 week ahead of time because there's a lot of pre-recording going on uh, of items and that are dropped in during the game and before the game. And they just want you on site, whether they are giving you a daily assignment or not. They want you there, so there's no danger of you not being able to travel to get in for the game the following Sunday. But otherwise, you try to treat it as much as a regular game as possible. In baseball, for the World Series and for the playoffs, the first for the first home game, there's the baseline introductions.
Yeah.
So thankfully, they have finally realized that we don't need to introduce the assistant massage therapist and people like that,
Okay. Yeah.
because we used to have to introduce all those sorts.
Oh, yeah.
The therapist who helps with the mental coaching, and
Yeah.
the assistant video guy. Not that they don't deserve to be announced, but
Right.
in that sense of grandness, why are we introducing so many of these people?
Right.
So
Yeah.
now for instance, the other night with the Toronto Blue Jays, my first announcement is, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Blue Jays staff and coaches and support staff, they're already lined up, and non-starters. They're already lined up on the third base line, so I don't have to introduce all those people, which would be 30, 40 people
Yeah.
before I got to the regular starting lineup. So we don't have to do that anymore for them. For the Yankees, we introduce everybody.
Okay.
So that's still a tradition that I don't mind doing, because it's the home team.
Yeah.
But for the visitors now, we cut down the introductions way back,
Mhm.
I think for the better, because that did take up a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So that was and then in the Super Bowl now, at the beginning when I started, I did introduce the starting lineup for both teams. They don't do that. They don't have the PA guy do that anymore, because there was one instance when I introduced the Dallas Cowboys, and now the Dallas Cowboys take the field, and they were supposed to run out on the field, and then I do the starting lineup. Well, the Cowboys, I think, were playing the Buffalo Bills that year. The Cowboys decided to walk onto the field instead of run.
Oh.
So that threw us behind by almost 90 seconds to 2 minutes, which is an eternity in football, because everything in the pregame show leading up to kickoff is timed to the nth degree.
Oh, yes.
So we decided after that, no more introduction of the teams like that.
Okay.
That it's all going to be pre-recorded, so as they can control every second on the clock leading up to kickoff. But so you can thank the Dallas Cowboys for that.
Okay. Now, and Paul, in all your years on the mic, in those different sports and all those seasons, is there one moment that you've announced that stands out for you? If I could quote Phil Rizzuto, have you ever had a holy cow moment?
Well, not really in PA. I mean, you announce the player and then it happens, as opposed to doing play-by-play of it happening as you're describing it. But when I was doing the play-by-play for Tampa Bay, when Wade Boggs got his 3,000th base hit, and I happened to be on television that inning, we used to switch off. Dwayne Stats, who was still there doing TV, we would switch off in the middle of the game, and he would do radio and I would do TV. That's the way it used to be for every team, but it's not that way anymore. And so that was a nice little tradition that was part of a dying tradition when we were doing it back in the late 90s. But calling the play-by-play of the 3,000th base hit, which I prepared for that week, they always say, you're not supposed to write out anything, but I wrote out what I was going to say. I did, and just had to fill in the blank, because I had listened and watched many of the other 3,000th base hit calls, and almost every man said, "And there it is." So I said, well, right there, I'm not going to say,
Okay.
"And there it is."
Yep.
So I came up with something like, I said, the hit that makes history is, and I left the blank.
There you go.
And so I fill in whatever happened.
Yep.
So after I described the home run call, which was to the right field stands, I paused for the crowd to kind of get into it.
Yep.
And then I said, the hit that makes history is a home run. And then I shut up for another 30, 40 seconds while the camera followed Wade around the bases, and him coming to home plate and kneeling down and kissing home plate.
Yep.
And then you fill in. Like it was on television, so I didn't need to do any description of what was going on, because I respected the audience to figure out by watching what was going on. I didn't need to tell them. That's not always the case, of course, these days with TV play-by-play announcers. But that's a podcast for a different day.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but it sounds like you said what needed to be said, and it
Yeah,
was Paul Olden. It was not somebody else. You said what needed to be said, and then you got
yeah,
out of the way of the game.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You learn that from Dick Enberg and Vin Scully, to say what you have to say and then let the crowd tell the audience listening or viewing at home that it's an important moment. I don't need to cite a litany of stats or anything like that to underscore the moment. There's time for that.
Now, on the other end of that spectrum, instead of the holy cow moment, the 3,000th hit, was there ever a moment that on the mic that you wish you had back? You kind of said, you mentioned some of them before that you heard and nobody else noticed and somebody else may have noticed, but was there one that you said, I wish I had that back?
I think there was one where I had to read an inscription of a plaque for a key moment at Yankee Stadium history that we were recognizing, and I read the wrong date. Yeah, even though it was right there in front of me, for some reason, sometimes you say things and you're looking dead at it, and it comes out differently. Uh, so later on, I had to go back and re-record it, and then we edited in the right read.
Okay.
So we covered up.
Now let's step away from the ball game for a second and away from the mic. I heard you're a pretty serious photographer. Now, I've seen a lot of your photos on Instagram, and Paul, that's impressive. What got you into that world of photography, and what keeps the shutter clicking?
Well, just a curiosity keeps the shutter clicking. One of the great photographers used to say, I wonder what it looks like if I take a photo of this. And so there's so many things out there to take a photo of that kind of keeps you going day after day. And lately I've been into black and white and monochromatic photography, and that's a whole challenge because a lot of that work is done to bring out the qualities of the photo in the dark room or the light room, electronically, digitally these days. Lightroom is what I use to bring out the high quality of a black and white picture, and that is time consuming. So that makes a lot of photographers shy away from doing that because a lot of people really don't like sitting in front of the computer and doing post production.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them.
No, you'd rather be out in the field having fun with your camera.
But yeah. So I just like taking pictures, and it's a serious hobby. And I take some pictures at Yankee Stadium when I can, because of where I sit. I'm kind of limited in my mobility. There's only a certain amount of pictures I can get. Sure. The mound and the home plate area. Yeah. So I have a whole litany of plays at the plate because it's close to me and I can get a clear shot. Maybe some plays at second base, but otherwise, that's not a heck of a lot I can get. A lot of first pitch throws, I can get those. So last night after the game, of course, Toronto had their whole team on the field for a team picture, and I got that. Obviously, I don't like taking too many of those pictures, and I'm certainly not going to post the opposition celebrating on Yankee Stadium field. That's not going to happen.
No, completely understandable. Yes. Now, Paul, this whole time has been a complete, absolute pleasure for us. You've not only given us a look into the art of public address announcing, staying in that Bob Shepard box, but also the heart behind it, those relationships, the stories, the legacy of working at a place like Yankee Stadium. Now, Paul, I've got one more question, if that's okay. After everything you've seen and everything you've said over the years on both coasts, what keeps you coming back to the mic?
Well, I've been involved in sports since I was 15 years old. And of course, before that, trying to play. I wasn't a very big kid, so I didn't have much success in basketball, football, or baseball, in part because I was in the school orchestra, and a lot of time was devoted to practicing the music as opposed to practicing baseball.
Now, what did you play in the orchestra?
Percussion.
Okay.
Anything that made noise, I play. A cowbell, triangle, timpani, snare drum, bass drum, wooden block, whatever. If it made noise, that's what I tried. That's what I was asked to play.
All right.
but our orchestra in junior high school and into high school was pretty good. So we were always doing a lot of summer concerts. So
Okay.
that took away from my availability to go practice baseball.
Oh, okay. All right. So
But
there's the excuse from stopping you from being a pro baseball player then.
yeah.
Okay.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I'll back you up. I will back you up.
And one last thing I wanted to add is that even after 17 years, and even when I was doing play-by-play for many years, but after 17 years of doing the PA for the Yankees, I still pre-record, or rather record, all of my announcements and listen to them on the way home on the subway or at home, just to make sure that I call it quality control, to make sure my energy level is up, make sure that my pacing is perfect, and to make sure that I'm on top of my game and not take being around on the job for 17 years for granted.
Yep. So, folks, even somebody who's at the top of the mountain in professional baseball is still checking themselves every day. How did I do? How does it sound? Always looking
Yeah,
for ways to get better. Yes.
that's important.
What a
Yeah.
great message. Yes. So, thank you again, Paul. This has been an absolute pleasure, we said. So, folks, thank you today for joining us on today's episode of PAA Game Day. And a huge thanks once again to our guest, Paul Olden, for sharing his journey, his experience, and that iconic voice. So, Paul, once again, thank you for taking a bit of your valuable time and spending it all with us.
You're welcome. My pleasure. See you down the road.
So, for all of our viewers and listeners out there, keep checking in at publicaddressannouncer.org for those free resources, those game forms, pronunciation guides, video tutorials, and more. And all of it, remember, is absolutely free. Written by public address announcers for public address announcers. And don't forget, keep following us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube, as well as Spotify. And don't forget, drop a review and share this with your friends who want to learn more about that voice that they hear, but they never get to see. So until next time, I'm Tom Winiecki, and I can't wait to hear you on the mic.